Do you like action games? Are you a fan of JRPGs? Do you like it when games have killer soundtracks? If you answered yes to all three of those questions, then you would love the East series. Yep, that's right, the East series. You might be wondering how the letters Y and S are pronounced East. Well, don't worry about it. I'll get to that soon, TM. For now though, Ys is an action JRPG series developed by Nihon Falcom and has been around since 1987. Over its 35 plus year history, it has amassed a small yet very passionate fan base. And I am one of those fans. In this video, I'm going to be going over the gameplay, the music, the general premise and setting of the series, and what games to start off with if you're a newcomer. During its many years, the Ys series has been no stranger to changing things up to stay relevant and exciting. However, when it comes to the gameplay, three things have always been the same. It's going to be fast, simple, and addicting. Well, with the exception of this guy over here. We'll get to that black sheep later. For now though, I'm going to go over the most prominent gameplay systems seen in the Ys series, starting with the bump system. The bump system, featured in Ys 1 and 2, is exactly what it sounds like. You bump into enemies to attack them. There are no attack buttons, however, the way in which you run into enemies will determine your success. If you just run straight at them, you're more likely to take damage, but if you hit them from off-center or from behind, you'll be a lot more successful. Joy from this system comes from just how fast and smooth the movement is. While certainly this is not appealing to modern audiences, back in 1987 I'm sure this gameplay style was revolutionary. Moving on to the Napishtim style gameplay system. The Napishtim system, featured in Ys 6, The Ark of Napishtim, Oath in Felghana, and Ys Origin, gets its name because, well, Ark of Napishtim is what started this gameplay style. The way this system blends action, platforming, and Metroidvania-esque elements is just simply beautiful. Even today, these games are just a joy to play. The movement and the animations are just so fast and fluid that you'll be slaying down hordes of monsters in no time. It's no wonder these games are still considered fan favorites in the series. Moving on to the more modern stuff, the party system. The party system is featured in Ys 7, Memories of Celceta, Ys 8, and Ys 9. The player in these games will have access to a party of characters, each with their different movesets and skill sets, providing a lot of variety to the gameplay. Every party member will have a different attack type, which will be strong or weak against monsters out on the field. The gameplay in this system heavily promotes constantly switching from party member to party member, just further enhancing the variety of the gameplay. While this modern system certainly is a lot different than what came before, it still holds that old Ys magic. It's still fast and smooth as butter, pleasing old and new fans alike. Falcom struck gold with this gameplay system, especially with Ys 8 and 9. But the Ys series is no stranger to change, and we are getting another new gameplay system to experience this year with the English release of Ys 10. Now that was just a brief and very generalized overview of the gameplay in the series. I could go a lot deeper with this, but I don't want to talk your ears off, and I don't want this video to be hours long. And so, off to the music we go. The music in the Ys series, like many other JRPGs, goes for the eccentric and melodic approach, meaning the tracks in the games are going to be very memorable. The series has a wide variety of genres in its tracks, However, what the series is best well known for are its hype tracks with the guitars just shredding or the violins going absolutely wild, and sometimes both in the same song. Throughout this entire video, I've been using music from the East series, so if you've liked what you're hearing so far, you would love the music in the East series. That said, this hasn't made for much of a section so far, has it? But don't worry, for you see, there is something very special and unique about the music in the East series. And that is, the music in East actively enhances the gameplay. In most other JRPGs, the field themes and battle themes are separate, but that is not the case in East. Once you are out of town and on the field, it's go time. The sword is out with monsters at the ready, and so this means that the field themes in East also act as the battle themes, which results in music that absolutely hypes you up and puts you in the perfect mood for slaying down enemies. East is a series where the statement grinding equals fun is true, and I believe the music plays a big part in that. Moving on to the premise and setting. Do you know the name Adol Christin? Adol Christin, roughly 1100 years ago. He was born in a small, unknown mountain village nestled in the northeast of Europe, at the western end of the Eurasian continent. He was a courageous swordsman who had traveled all across Europe and many a foreign land from the age of 16 till his death at 63. He, who was born as the mere son of a peasant, was known by all as a curious and active youth. More than anything, he wished to know of worlds beyond his own. It was not until one fateful day when a traveler came upon his village that he was inspired to discover what it truly means to be an adventurer. In those days, whether by foot or by ship, his range of deeds were truly marvelous. The Africa continent to the south, the Tigris of Orietta in the east, the North Pole, etc. For what we've been able to piece together, his desire to explore faraway lands was nothing short of astonishing. Thankfully, his many adventures have been meticulously chronicled in journals, thoroughly detailing every person, place, and event of note. The 5 dragons of Altago, the sea of trees in Salsetta, Kefin, the lost city of sand, etc. His travelogues, which number well over 100, were found preserved in the basement of his birthplace, hidden in silence, in stunning contrast to his great deeds. As we read them, we learn more about his influence. What follows is the first tale of a 2-part story, Ancient East Vanished, the first of his tomes to be translated and novelized. His first adventure in the land of Asteria, surrounded by an impenetrable wall of turbulent ocean. This narrative will continue as he journeys across the land, a chronicle of light of darkness. In a disturbed and chaotic era, we wish for you to immerse yourself in the same journey he himself experienced. Now, what I just read was a fan translation of a segment found in the original instruction manual of East 1 from 1987. It's not the greatest fan translation of that segment. What can I say? I picked this one because I like the book aesthetic, alright? The setting of East is many years ago in a fictional version of Earth, while the stories and characters of each game are based on the exaggerated journal entries Adol Christin wrote. Don't expect a historical accuracy with its setting. There is certainly a lot of what I would like to call anime magic in the series. But hey man, that's what makes things fun. One thing I would really like to point out though, is that the continuity and lore of this series is surprisingly deep. Now, is it on the level of Nihon Falcom's other flagship, the Trails series, or Final Fantasy XIV? Nah, not at all. But for a series that has gameplay as good as this, it is truly noteworthy, and is a nice little bonus for the fans of the series. Now this brings the question, who is Adol Christin. The man, the myth, the legend, adventurer, and heartbreaker. The main character of the series, Adol Christin. He takes on the role of the silent protagonist and is present in every game except Ys Origin. At first, he may seem a little generic and boring, but as time goes on, this is a character that grows on ya. His ADHD for adventure just might be contagious. So I've been caught up to the series since 2015, and I find it fascinating that the first thing I always want to know is, where on the timeline is the new game going to take place? How old is Adol in this one? Since I already know the gameplay and music in Ys is going to be top tier, most of my anticipation for new games in the series is for stuff related to Adol. There's just something so tantalizing about this guy. The goddamn ADHD for adventure, man. It's a hell of a drug. Anyways, it's probably dangerous to keep going down this tangent, so let's move on, eh? The Ys series overall is pretty newcomer friendly. Most games in the series are pretty standalone. That said, I do got some suggestions, and I think the easiest way to kick this off is where not to start. I got 3 games right here that I recommend not starting with. First up is Ys 2. The reason not to start with this one is, well, it's the only game in the series that is a direct sequel. This game takes place mere moments after Ys 1, so don't play it until you have played Ys 1. The Black Sheep finally returns. Ys 5, when it first came out, was so badly received in Japan that it nearly killed the series for 8 years. Falcom were having an identity crisis when they developed this game. The gameplay is not at all like Ys. The best way to describe it would be a shittier version of Secret of Mana, I guess. The music is pretty bland as well. It doesn't have any track that hypes you up. The only way to play it in English is on an emulator with a fan translation patch, so it's not very accessible either. Hopefully this game gets a remake someday. Memories of Celceta is the third and final game I don't recommend starting with, and that is because the first 6 to 8 hours of the game is pretty rough and underwhelming. After those starting hours, the game does pick up quite a bit and is pretty decent, but starting here would not be a good first impression for a newcomer. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get down to business. Onwards to the games I recommend starting with. The first recommendation I got is what I'm calling the safe bet choice. In terms of praise and popularity, this game is essentially the Final Fantasy VII of the Ys series. Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. Falcom were on fire when they made this game. The gameplay, the music, the exploration. Oh man, this is a modern classic that should be played. Next up is a recommendation for the retro gamers out there. If you get a massive kick out of old games, you have a library of 80s and 90s games in your basement, you would love Ys 1 and 2. Now there are so many different versions of these games, so which ones do you go for? That's easy. Go for either the Chronicles version or the TurboGrafx CD version. Coming up is a recommendation for those who like to have an old school experience but need just a little bit of quality of life in their games. Ys, the Oath in Felghana is perfect for that. This is also arguably the hardest game in the series, so if you really enjoy a challenge, this one is right up your alley. This one is for all the oddballs out there. If you are someone who has hot takes on the regular, these games are the ones for you. Now, don't you worry. I'm an oddball myself, because these 2 games are my personal favorites in the series. I'm talking about Ys 6 and Ys 7. These games have a very special jankiness and charm that isn't found anywhere else in the series. While these games are my favorites, they most certainly aren't objectively the best games in the series. Alrighty, those were my suggestions for the newcomers out there. Now, if you're indecisive and don't know which one to pick, go for the safe bet choice, Ys 8. The Ys series is criminally underrated and unknown in my opinion. It is truly one of, if not the best, action JRPG series out there. It has fun and fast combat that satisfies like no other. It has music that gets you jamming on the regular. And it has a surprisingly deep lore and continuity that pulls you into its world. Now that you know a little bit about Ys, don't miss out on this series. Dive into the adventures of Adol Christin. Anyways, I think that's all I got for this video. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. I'll see you around. Have a good one. Peace.